They weren't blockbusters. They didn't open in theaters. But these made-for-TV movies of the 1980s left a permanent scar on pop culture. Broadcast to millions in living rooms across America, they tackled unspoken fears, shattered taboos, and became legendary. These aren't just forgotten relics. They're cult treasures. Let's explore 15 1980s TV movies that became cult legends. 1. The Day After, 1983. Imagine sitting down to watch television and walking away convinced the world could end tomorrow. That's exactly what happened when The Day After aired. On November 20th, 1983, over 100 million Americans watched this ABC TV movie about the devastating aftermath of a nuclear strike on Kansas. What started as a dramatic warning became a full-blown national crisis. The film didn't just show war, it showed the gruesome cost of survival. Charred bodies, hospitals overflowing, families disintegrating. It wasn't special effects that made it terrifying. It was the realism. Ordinary towns, ordinary people. And then, nothing but ash. President Ronald Reagan himself was reportedly shaken by it, and the broadcast influenced nuclear disarmament talks with the Soviet Union. Many TV stations refused to air it. Churches held emergency prayer sessions. Schools offered counseling the next day. It wasn't entertainment, it was trauma. But it worked. Decades later, The Day After is remembered not just as a film, but as a cultural earthquake. It turned the small screen into a battleground of conscience, and it still haunts anyone who saw it. In the Cold War era, it made Americans stop and ask, what if this really happened? That chilling thought is why it became a cult legend. 2. Dark Night of the Scarecrow, 1981, originally dismissed as just another horror flick, Dark Night of the Scarecrow quietly terrified its way into cult status. This wasn't a theatrical release. It aired on CBS on a quiet Saturday night in October, but its eerie rural setting and moral horror made it unforgettable. The story revolves around Bubba, a mentally challenged man wrongly accused of harming a young girl. A group of vigilantes, 4 small-town men, decide to take justice into their own hands, murdering Bubba in cold blood. But the twist? Bubba was innocent, and someone or something is now hunting down his killers, one by one, hiding behind the mask of a scarecrow. There's no gore, no high-octane chases, just dread. Pure, unrelenting dread. Director Frank DeFelitta crafts a slow-burn revenge tale soaked in atmosphere, paranoia, and poetic justice. And Charles Durning's performance as the cowardly villain is pitch perfect. The Scarecrow never moves. It just appears, standing silently in a field after every death. That visual alone has haunted viewers for decades. Originally overlooked, it found its fans on late-night reruns and VHS tapes passed between horror lovers. Today, Dark Night of the Scarecrow is hailed as one of the greatest horror TV movies ever made. Proof that terror doesn't need a cinema to take root. 3. The Burning Bed, 1984, Farrah Fawcett. Just saying her name conjures glamour. But in 1984, she stunned the world with a role so raw, so unglamorous, it changed her career, and possibly American law. The Burning Bed wasn't just a movie. It was a revolution in prime time. Based on the true story of Francine Hughes, a battered wife who set her abusive husband on fire while he slept, the film broke television's unspoken rules. Domestic violence was rarely discussed, let alone shown. But here it was, bruises, screams, terror behind closed doors. Fawcett shed her pin-up image to play Francine with painful honesty, giving voice to thousands of women who had suffered in silence. What made this film legendary wasn't just its brutality, it was the public's response. Millions watched. Crisis hotlines were overwhelmed. Lawmakers took notice. For the first time, a network drama forced a national conversation about battered women, self-defense, and justice. And that title, The Burning Bed, became a metaphor for rage long suppressed. Even today, its impact lingers. It wasn't a courtroom thriller. It was a story of survival, of a woman pushed to the edge, of a society forced to look in the mirror, and that's why it remains one of TV's most important and haunting cult classics. 4V, the original miniseries, 1983. They came in peace, or so they said. V began as a science fiction miniseries on NBC, but it quickly became one of the most iconic TV events of the 1980s. What looked like an alien invasion story was really a chilling allegory for fascism, propaganda, and resistance. The premise was simple. Reptilian aliens disguised as humans arrive on Earth, offering help. But soon they infiltrate governments, manipulate media, and disappear dissenters. Sound familiar? That was the point. Creator Kenneth Johnson based V on Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here, drawing parallels to Nazi Germany. The series featured shocking imagery. Swastika-like insignias, collaborators turning on neighbors, and scenes of scientists being targeted. But the real twist came midway through the series when one of the aliens peels off her human face, revealing a lizard underneath. It was a moment burned into the brains of every kid watching. The series spawned sequels, novels, toys, and a remake, but none matched the power of the original. V was high-concept sci-fi with a moral backbone and the courage to say that tyranny doesn't arrive with tanks. Sometimes it smiles. That relevance has never faded. In a world still grappling with disinformation and authoritarianism, V feels eerily current. That's the power of a true cult legend. 5. An Early Frost, 1985. In 1985, AIDS was still taboo, misunderstood, feared. Then NBC aired An Early Frost, and everything changed. This groundbreaking drama was the first network television movie to tackle the AIDS crisis head-on. A young, successful lawyer, played by Aidan Quinn, comes home to tell his family he's gay and dying. It wasn't just a coming-out story. It was a confrontation with stigma, grief, and unconditional love. The power of An Early Frost lies in its quiet devastation. No shouting, no melodrama, just heartbreak. Ben Gazzara and Gina Rowlands play the parents, torn between denial and acceptance. And viewers, many of whom had never heard the word AIDS spoken aloud, were forced to see its human cost. Critics raved. The Emmys came calling, but more importantly, it reached people. It helped reduce fear. It helped families talk. It helped the nation understand. Decades later, its courage still echoes. An Early Frost wasn't flashy. It was necessary, and in the world of television, sometimes that's how legends are born. 6. The Executioner's Song, 1982. What happens when a killer becomes a celebrity? The Executioner's Song isn't just a crime drama. It's a haunting character study, an existential descent, and one of the most unflinching portrayals of violence ever made for television. Based on Norman Mailer's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, the movie dramatizes the final months in the life of Gary Gilmore, the first person executed in the United States after the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. Tommy Lee Jones delivers a performance that's almost too real. His Gary Gilmore is not a charming anti-hero or a deranged madman. He's just human, frighteningly human. The movie doesn't excuse him. It doesn't glorify him. It lets us watch him unravel, and audiences couldn't look away. When it aired on NBC, the film ignited national debate over capital punishment. It was bleak, brutal, and deeply uncomfortable. But its raw honesty gave it a strange magnetism. It felt dangerous for network TV. Jones won an Emmy for his role, and the movie became required viewing in university ethics and law classes. It didn't just portray a killer. It forced America to look directly at the machinery of justice, death, and redemption. That haunting final scene, you'll never forget it. That's the mark of a cult legend. 7. Small Sacrifices, 1989. There are crime stories. And then there's Small Sacrifices, a true story so twisted, so heartbreaking, that it continues to chill audiences to this day. Farrah Fawcett returned to TV in this psychological drama based on Ann Rule's best-selling book. She plays Diane Downs, a mother who drove her children into the woods one night, shot them, then fabricated a bizarre carjacking story to cover it up. 2 of her children survived. 1 didn't, and the public watched in horror as Diane's strange behavior unraveled on screen, smiling in interviews, singing pop songs, flirting with detectives. Her guilt wasn't just evident, it was surreal. Fawcett delivered a career-defining performance, disappearing into the skin of a woman who lacked empathy but craved attention. The courtroom scenes were electric. The psychological manipulation was terrifying. The truth, when it hit, was almost too much to bear. When it aired as a 2-part event on ABC, it riveted the nation. Viewers weren't just watching a drama, they were witnessing a descent into madness. And they couldn't look away. Years later, Small Sacrifices still holds up as one of the most disturbing and emotionally powerful crime dramas in TV history. Its grip on true crime fanatics is unshakable. Eighth Adam, 1983. It began with a tragedy, and it became a movement. Adam is one of the rare TV movies that reshaped public policy. Based on the real-life kidnapping and murder of 6-year-old Adam Walsh, the film starred Daniel J. Travanti and JoBeth Williams as John and Reeve Walsh, 2 parents thrust into every family's nightmare. What followed was more than just a dramatization. It was a national wake-up call. The film showed every horrifying detail of the search, the police missteps, the media frenzy, and the unimaginable heartbreak. It didn't shy away from the pain. It brought it home, and when it ended, a scroll of missing. Children's faces appeared on the screen. Hotlines lit up. Tips poured in. Some kids were even recovered. Adam wasn't just watched, it was used. John Walsh would later go on to create America's Most Wanted. And thanks in part to the movie's success, major child protection laws were passed, including the Missing Children's Act. The film was so impactful, NBC aired 2 sequels. But it's the original that still lingers, because it didn't end with credits. It ended with purpose. Adam proved that a TV movie could change more than minds. It could save lives. 9. The Deliberate Stranger, 1986. Before Zac Efron played Ted Bundy, before Netflix documentaries dissected serial killers, there was The Deliberate Stranger. This 2-part NBC event introduced America to the true horror of Ted Bundy, the charming law student who hid a monstrous double life. And the shocker? Mark Harmon, then best known as a handsome heartthrob, played Bundy with bone-chilling calm. Harmon doesn't overact. He doesn't snarl. He smiles. He manipulates, and that makes it all the more terrifying. The Deliberate Stranger doesn't glorify Bundy. It tracks his descent with journalistic precision. From disappearances in Washington to the horrors in Florida, the film captures not just the man, but the system that failed to stop him. When it aired, it sent shivers through living rooms nationwide. This was no fictional slasher. This was real. And Harmon's performance left viewers rattled. Many still consider it his best work. Critics lauded the film for its respectful handling of the victims and its refusal to sensationalize. Today, it remains one of the most unsettling crime dramas ever made for television. It didn't need gore. It had something scarier: the truth. 10. I Know My First Name is Stephen, 1989. Some stories are too heartbreaking to be fiction. I Know My First Name is Stephen is one of them, a 2-night miniseries that gripped a nation and broke its heart. It tells the true story of Stephen Stainer, a 7-year-old boy abducted in 1972 and held captive for 7 years. But the horror didn't end there. At age 14, Stephen bravely escaped and rescued another kidnapped child in the process. What followed was a surreal, painful return home. Stephen had forgotten how to be a child. His family didn't know how to handle the trauma, and the media frenzy only made things worse. Corin Nemec's performance as teenage Stephen is quietly devastating. You can feel his confusion, his longing, and his rage. The movie doesn't sensationalize, it mourns. When it aired, it shocked viewers unfamiliar with the real case. And when it ended, it didn't feel like justice, it felt like survival. Barely. Stephen Stainer became a national symbol of courage, but tragedy followed. He died in a motorcycle accident just a few years later, and his brother, Cary Stainer, would later become a serial killer. It's one of the most haunting true stories ever put on screen, and it remains a masterclass in empathy, restraint, and heartbreak. 11. Something About Amelia, 1984. In 1984, network television did the unthinkable. It broadcast a movie about incest. Something About Amelia shattered a wall of silence that had existed for decades. Starring Ted Danson in a shocking dramatic turn, the film follows a suburban family torn apart when 13-year-old Amelia reveals that her father has been sexually abusing her. What made the film so powerful wasn't just its subject, it was its approach. It didn't sensationalize, it didn't exploit. It simply told the truth and let that truth hit like a hammer. Ted Danson's portrayal of the father was horrifying in its normalcy. No monster makeup, no sinister soundtrack, just a man, a secret, and the devastating consequences. The emotional weight came from Glenn Close as the mother, shocked, betrayed, and forced to choose between her child and the man she thought she knew. When it aired, it was a national event. Over 30 million viewers tuned in. The networks were flooded with letters. Crisis hotlines saw a surge in calls, and the media couldn't stop talking about it. But the true impact came quietly, in living rooms, in schools, in therapy sessions, where people finally found the courage to speak. In an era when taboo ruled TV, Something About Amelia changed everything. It wasn't just a movie, it was a moment, a raw, painful, necessary moment that became legendary. 12. A Woman Scorned. The Betty Broderick Story, 1989. Hell hath no fury like a woman betrayed, and a woman scorned made sure you never forgot it. This late 80s made-for-TV sensation told the real-life story of Betty Broderick, the picture-perfect California housewife who snapped after her husband left her for a younger woman. But this wasn't a simple divorce story. It ended in double murder and a media circus that shocked the nation. Meredith Baxter, once America's sweetheart from Family Ties, transformed into a woman unraveling at the seams. Her performance was electric, furious, fragile, and disturbingly human. You don't root for her, but you understand her, and that's what made it so terrifying. The movie doesn't paint in black and white. It lives in the messy gray, broken promises, emotional abuse, and the slow descent into madness. It forces viewers to ask, was she always like this, or did we create her? Audiences were riveted. The film became an instant hit, leading to a sequel. And Betty Broderick? She became a pop culture icon, a symbol of domestic rage, tragic vengeance, and the consequences of being ignored. More than 30 years later, her name still sparks debate. That's the mark of a cult legend. It lingers, unsettles, and refuses to fade. 13th Red Flag, The Ultimate Game, 1981. You probably haven't heard of Red Flag, The Ultimate Game. That's exactly why it's a cult legend. This 1981 military thriller aired on CBS and quietly captured the attention of Cold War-era viewers. The story? 2 Air Force pilots enter a high-stakes war game simulation that spirals into a psychological and emotional battle, testing their loyalty, courage, and sanity. There are no aliens, no explosions, just tension, military politics, mental breakdowns. It's Top Gun without the ego, fail-safe without the nukes, and a touch of 12 o'clock high realism. The performances are subtle, but intense. Barry Bostwick surprises with dramatic depth, and the flight footage, filmed with real military cooperation, adds an authenticity few TV movies ever achieve. What made Red Flag special was its insider's view of military life. It wasn't romanticized, it was procedural, psychological, and almost philosophical in how it examined power, competition, and the weight of simulated war. Though never a ratings juggernaut, the film quietly developed a cult following among veterans, military buffs, and Cold War historians. It's one of those rare TV movies that feels like it was made for a reason, even if it never reached the masses. Over time, its reputation only grew. Today, it's a hidden gem, passed around by fans like a secret code. That's the essence of a cult legend. 14. The Best Little Girl in the World, 1981. Long before eating disorders were part of mainstream conversation, the best little girl in the world dared to confront anorexia head-on, and it did so with heart-wrenching power. This ABC drama starred a young Jennifer Jason Leigh in her first major role. She plays Casey, a high school student who slowly descends into self-destruction, counting calories, obsessing over her body, and eventually collapsing under the weight of impossible expectations. What makes this film unforgettable is its tenderness. It doesn't yell, it whispers. It shows the silent torment, the skipped meals, the scale obsession, the hollow eyes, and it shows the family's helplessness, trapped between love and denial. Leigh's performance is devastating. Raw, skeletal, and full of sadness, she brings terrifying realism to a condition that was then widely misunderstood. When it aired, it sparked a flood of letters from parents and teens alike. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Therapists recommended it to patients. And slowly, people began to talk about eating disorders, not as vanity, but as illness. Even now, decades later, the film's stark honesty holds up. It never offered easy answers. It just said, "This is real, this is happening, and we need to care." That honesty made it not just educational, but legendary. 15. The Wave, 1981. What if fascism wasn't a relic of the past? What if it could happen again, this week, in your school, in your town? That terrifying question forms the heart of The Wave, a TV movie based on a real-life experiment conducted in a California high school in 1967. The premise is simple and chilling. A history teacher tries to demonstrate the appeal of authoritarianism by creating a fictional student movement. Within days, it spirals out of control. Students abandon individuality for uniformity. Peer pressure morphs into surveillance, and the teacher realizes, too late, that he's awakened something dangerous. The movie is minimalist. No explosions, no villains, just a creeping sense of dread as students fall in line. The strength of The Wave lies in its plausibility. This isn't fiction, it's a mirror. Teachers across the world still use The Wave in classrooms. Its message is universal. The seeds of dictatorship live inside all of us. All it takes is the right leader, the right moment, and a willingness to obey. In the decades since its release, The Wave has only grown in relevance. It's been remade, re-examined, and rediscovered by new generations. But the original TV version remains the most haunting. Because it asks the scariest question of all: what would you have done? These weren't blockbusters, but they left deeper scars than most films ever could. The 1980s TV movie era gave us stories too bold for theaters and too real to forget. If you love this dive into TV's hidden gems, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your favorite cult classic below.